A very good evening to one and all. Well, it has been a long while that I last spoke in the public. And this time I have the opportunity to speak through live streaming. This evening, I'd like to introduce the book I've written, Doing Right by People. Well, maybe I'd like to first thank the organizers of Singapore Book Fair to do this online, and to all of you tuning in. I'd like to start by introducing myself. You could say that I'm a product of Singapore, a true blue Singaporean, a first generation Singapore born. I went through the Singapore school system right up to university. A pioneer generation. I did full-time national service. In fact, I was born in the year that all the young men going onwards have to do full-time national service. I've worked in two of Singapore's most iconic companies, Keppel Corporation and Singapore Airlines. I worked 25 years in Keppel and 9 years with Singapore Airlines. I served 18 years as a member of parliament. Well, I'm quite immersed in Singapore's multi-ethnic, multilingual, multicultural, multi-religious society and environment. I emphasize this because I think this is something that we don't often notice. It makes Singapore very different. I'd like to start by sharing with you, why do I write the book? How it is written, and for whom this book is written. Why do I write this book? Well, I grew up in the years that we all have to read and learn from foreign books. In fact, I grew up in the generation that there were hardly any local books. Maybe you see more of them. I think it is about time, after more than 50 years of Singapore's independence, that we begin as Singaporeans to add to the body of literature for the knowledge and experience that we have gained. Many of the foreign books and literature has to be adapted to our Singaporean environment. So, because I believe I have got good experience in very reputable and formidable companies, I should share my experience. In many ways, I'm a teacher at heart because I believe in sharing the experiences so that more could benefit from it. How did I do it? Well, over the years, I've kept notes of all my experiences because there were interesting events that etched in my mind. And somehow I saw it necessary to keep records of them. As I said, maybe because I was thinking that there will be useful materials for training, for example, for talks. And keeping notes and reflecting on them, it's something that I found very useful. Thinking and reflecting over people, role models, examples, lesson learned, the good and bad, the positive and the negative, those that you choose to follow or not to follow, are things that we should reflect on. And I think they are useful for me, for my learning. And it is useful also for the impartation of this knowledge and experience. For whom do I write for? Well, this book is intended for all and sundry, really, because people issues, people management, people relations, it's something that's close to us. And especially if you are a HR professional or a people manager, I think you'll find something very worthwhile in the book. And even for eminent scholars and professors, I just want to read you this email I received from a very eminent, well-published professor. And he wrote, after reading the book from cover to cover. And he said, he found my book to be very rich in the technical information that he could use, even as a researcher. He has read a lot about Singapore Airlines, especially in the pilots' union issues. And he said that the details and the first-hand account of those experiences, he found it useful. So for those who are interested even to do research, has found the book to be useful. The others who have read it have told me that they found the book to be easy to read, interesting. Someone said they are very blunt, straightforward, no holds barred. But I believe different readers have got different insights of the book. And I would intend it to all professionals, managers, and anyone interested in people to read the book. Well, why the title? Why do I choose this title, Doing Right by People? Well, doing right, it's something we all know. But I wish to put across the message that there is to be a clarity of intent when leading, managing, and relating to people. Doing right by people should be intentional. Doing means continually do. Keep on doing. By doing good, we actually turn commitment into conviction. From words to action. From being efficient to effectiveness. From ordinary to extraordinary. We are able to punch above our weight to find our place in the world. In Singapore Airlines, we are actually made up of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. They are your neighbors next door, but they are an iconic company because of this trying to do good, being of service to others. So doing right is not really the purview and domain only for the social service sectors. Doing right by people should be the heart of business and operations. Is there a cost and sacrifice to it? Obviously, there is. There could be possibility of rejection. It costs us some inconvenience, even ingratitude for our attempt. But I believe it is worthwhile because it gives meaning and significance to our life at work. We actually build trust. We generate goodwill. We grow and mature as a people. We display solidarity. We show dogged perseverance and resilience. And we stay united as a people in the organization, in the community, in the nation. So doing right by people is a message that I want to put across, that it should be part of us. It should be action-oriented. And there is that possibility that we should consider. So what is in the book? Well, it is not a very heavy book. It's pretty light. It's 224 pages, divided into 7 chapters with an annexure. The 7 chapters really are about my personal work and life experience at Keppel, in Singapore Airlines, and in politics. And of course, there are a couple of chapters on HR, because basically I'm an HR practitioner. Well, let me share with you some of the anecdotes and some highlights in the book. Let's start with Keppel. Well, I've spent 25 years at Keppel. So where the Keppel that I started was only a shipyard at Keppel Harbor and a small shipyard at Tanjong Pagar. Today, from one shipyard, it has become a conglomerate. When I graduated, I could graduate before I do national service, because during that time, those of us who have got a place in university could complete university first before serving the national service. And after national service, I looked for a job and applied to Keppel. What impressed me was the interview that I had at Keppel. A fresh graduate looking for a job, and 2 gentlemen interviewed me. They were 2 of the top 4 executives of Keppel. The general manager, who is executive director, the personnel manager, who is also the executive director. Can you imagine the impression that you have as a young graduate being interviewed by very important people? And I've carried that practice in my working life. Even though I'm senior, I make it a point to interview the candidates. Why is it important for the most senior person to conduct the interview? It is because you are very experienced, you can make good assessment, and you are in a position to determine how far this individual can go. And you have the personal knowledge of the person that you recruited into the company. And you can monitor and track the progress of the individual. Today, we are facing COVID-19. In 1985, Singapore had the first recession since independence. Keppel was a shipyard that has this picture by the staircase to the office. The shipyard that never sleeps. The shipyard that never sleeps. It was doing well, yet in 1985, it could not keep all the staff because of the recession. It was a very, very difficult time for us, especially for me, having to handle the retrenchment of the workers. I know today we are facing similar situation. Indeed, retrenchment must be the last resort. When we carried out the retrenchment, we do it judiciously because we see ourselves as a going concern. And we do not choose people to retrench on the basis of who we want to release, but from the perspective of who are the critical resources that we need to retain. The worst thing that can ever happen is to lose the good workers. When I joined politics, it was something that I didn't thought it would happen. It was possible. I was a reluctant candidate, actually, but it's written in the book. But I'm very glad for the experience because I work with very formidable individuals like Mr. S. Rajaratnam and Dr. Toh Chin Chye. And also the relationship between human resources, personnel management, and politics. One of the interesting anecdote I can share with you is, in my 18 years in politics, I have the support of 300 regular community leaders who help me run the constituency. And they are not paid for their service. But they come in, week out to serve. So if you are an employer or a manager and you have difficulty getting your paid staff to do work, something is not quite right, isn't it? How is it possible that unpaid volunteers are willing to spend their hours to serve, and you paying them, paying your employees, and they are reluctant? The answer is the meaning of work. Do you give them work that's meaningful? Do you give them work that is interesting? Is it something that they like to do? And they are willing to even do it for free for you. So that's an important lesson for me. And of course, there are many issues in running a constituency. And I think if you are interested to become a grassroots leader or a politician, you can actually read the book and get some insights of how the constituency is run and what are some of the issues that a member of parliament faces. In Singapore Airlines, though I worked only for 9 years, they are really the tumultuous years. Can you imagine the second day that I started work in Singapore Airlines, I have to issue a suspension letter to an employee who was suspected to have committed fraud to the tune of $35 million. There's an interesting lesson on this. It is in a book. Crisis management as a result of SQ6, the air disaster. One of our Singapore Airlines aircraft crashed in Taipei Chiang Kai-shek Airport. I know what is it like for those people managing the crisis now, right now, with COVID-19. When we are managing a crisis, we do not get all the information. Information needs to be gathered, organized from different sources, and it takes time. And really, what is important, and SIA has constantly shown, we had been very good in managing crisis. We get better after each crisis. And I'm very sure after this crisis, SIA will become even stronger for the next decade or so. And that's the nature of business cycles. It is something that no one expects. I didn't expect. We went through SARS, 2003. Well, we were very fortunate. We recovered after 6 months. But unfortunately, COVID-19 seems to be taking much more longer. And we have to brace for this longer period of time that we have. So HR topics. I've written about strategic HR and also about HR business partnering from the experiences that I had. So you can have a read to it, in the book. So all that experience that I shared, it's because I believe that we have experience in Singapore that are rich, but it is really requiring effort to organize them, to write them. I want to thank those who have assisted me in the writing of the book, and especially for Straits Times Press, because Straits Times Press was very quick in accepting my draft manuscript for publication. So if you have any questions, you can post them. And one of the things that I would like to take the remaining time to talk about, it's what do I see the future of HR? One of the things that is quite clear, organizations will be smaller than what it used to be. More and more HR professionals will require the skills of a self-employed consultant. For that matter, as COVID-19 has shown us, working from home is very much being independent and able to do all the work all by oneself. So the skills that we require is the ability to be flexible and to make ourselves more versatile in different skill sets. Because going forward, employment contracts, employment relationship will change. I know that in Singapore, we've got this retirement age law, but we also have to appreciate the market realities with regards to employment. There's a question that I'd like to address. Someone had asked that SIA has announced pay cut and compulsory no pay leave despite the government's package to help lighten their staff costs. Do you think the airline will be forced to retrench some of its staff? Well, one of the things with regards to running the airline, actually, it is quite technical. Because once you have a fleet, and every fleet requires crew complement, and the frequency of flights will determine the crew requirements. So there are calculations that could be made with regards to crew requirements. So there need to be that variability in crew. You can't help it. All right, if you need 7 sets of crew per aircraft, then you only have 7 sets. If you need 5 sets, then only 5 sets per aircraft, depending on the routing, depending on the crew requirement. So that's pretty technical and not difficult to estimate and derive, because you have got the flying pattern, you have the crew complement. With regards to the other stuff, well, obviously, technology will come into the picture. I mean, people being replaced by technology is not new. During my time, we used to have telephone operators. Suddenly, the job is no longer there. There are many jobs that have been displaced. This is inevitable. So it all depends on the nature of the job that you're in. And for example, like in the banks, if more and more financial technology is being used, then obviously some of the jobs will be displaced. So in the airlines too, if financial technology is going to displace some of those roles, so you can't help it. So the question is, how many jobs are still required? Who is the best people to be chosen to do the job in the next 5, 10, 15 years? And for the airline, they have to prepare for the recovery going forward. So the principle for Singapore Airlines must be the same principle for all companies, even those who are doing well, because it is an opportunity for them to review their operations and to make themselves stronger in the next phase of growth or development. So obviously, a good airline, a good company will not want to lose good resources, good talent. Singapore will always be short of people when the recovery comes. We only have 20,000 births a year on average. Today, yes, suddenly there's a worldwide shortage, oversupply. But when the recovery comes, we'll be scrambling again. And for SIA, when it comes, you cannot make, you need the industry experience, and you cannot do it with the industry experience. So I'm optimistic that the airline will take a very forward-looking view with regards to man requirements and to make them stronger, make them more competitive. And like we always have this belief, we want to be the last one flying. We want to be the last company standing. And that's what competition is all about, to be the last one remaining in the industry. So that's competitiveness. And I think SIA, have a good chance of doing it if the leadership get the conditions right. And obviously, I hope that they will read the book and look at the examples of how they can do good and do right for the people in the long term. Because by doing right, you reap the dividends and the rewards later. Well, that's a question about many foreigners who have taken regional HR role and government policy about approving such foreigners. I think my take on this is this. Every organization will endeavor to choose the best person for a job. And sometimes we also have to examine ourselves as Singaporeans, how knowledgeable and how well equipped we are to handle regional and global issues. We need the cross-cultural exposure, for example. We need to be able to take some of the postings that has been required for us. So good employers will be silly to deny Singaporeans their rightful place in the cohort. Because Singaporeans have the reputation of being honest, reputation of being hardworking, and there are many good things about us. But we will have to examine that in the global and regional marketplace, how do we compete so that people can find the value in us? So I would say that, unfortunately, it is employers who have got the right to make those employment decisions, but it is foolhardy of employers to deny good Singaporeans the opportunity, because it's their loss. It's really their loss. And I don't think government is in a position to insist how employers are to recruit and employ whom. So unless there's really a discrimination against Singaporean, then I think there is a case for them to answer, for the employer to answer. But I think here it is how we should compete and to be able to do well for the position that we are given. So my urging to Singaporeans is, yes, there are many opportunities outside Singapore, but we need to equip ourselves to take hold of those opportunities. Employers of contract staff on terms of contract welfare to bonus, you are not bothered. Well, unfortunately, because of the retirement age, companies have become very selective in recruiting tenured staff. So it is a situation whereby it is an arrangement, employment relationship between the employer and the employee. All right. The reason why employers can continue to employ employees of contract is because there are people willing to enter into that arrangement. But from my experience, especially at Keppel, it is unwise for any employer to treat contract staff differently from their own staff. Because unless you are not expecting the same standard of performance from contract staff. Contract staff, by its very nature, should be only temporary. Could be a testing period. Could be an opportunity for both parties to decide whether you want to have a long-term employment relationship. But it is unwise of employer to treat contract staff less than their own employees, or expect more from contract staff and paying them less, because they are not doing justice to themselves. So that's the reason why employers will have to think very clearly, what are they doing for their business? Are they here for a long term? And I think one of the important things that also employees will have to wise up is, please look for employers who are profitable and who are here for the long term. I want to thank you all for listening in. I'm afraid that time is too short for us to cover too many topics. I hope that we'll have an opportunity to meet again. So please get hold of this book. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.